Hello and welcome to Off the Cuff. In fact, what happens to be the fourth edition of Off the Cuff. And what have we had so far? We've had two key ministers and we've had one key investor in Startup India. And who do we have now? We couldn't have actually waited one more before getting a cricketing icon on the show, because cricket is India's religion, business, obsession, everything. So we have who else but Rahul Dravid.
Thanks,
Rahul, welcome to Off the Cuff.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
We know you to be a man of few words, and we know you to be somebody who's always conscious of where the off stump is.
You have to be.
So I'm hoping that you will forget the off stump for some time and play a T20 a little bit. So Rahul, mentoring. You are now Delhi, and if I may say so, I'm an IPL partisan, so our team's mentor, Delhi team's mentor. But haven't you always been a mentor to the team? They all treat you as a mentor.
Yeah, I'm glad they're saying that behind my back as well, maybe, because sometimes you hear the odd comment that, "Jada bhi advice mat do," just, you know. So as you sort of move on in your cricketing journey and you become, a senior player, I think you're conscious of the fact that you want to try and make it easier for the next generation of cricketers coming through. You want to help them as much as you possibly can in and around the team environment. And as I finished playing, then the opportunity to coach is something that I've really enjoyed, because it's given me an opportunity again to firstly get involved back in the game and get my hands and sort of work at the ground level and gets my hands dirty really and work around an environment that I enjoy. But also the opportunity to just share some of the thoughts I have, some of the experiences I have, the opportunity to hopefully create an environment that allows young people to grow and develop and find themselves really, more than me trying to tell them what to do.
What's the most interesting or intelligent question that one of these youngsters has asked you lately?
Look, you do get asked a lot of technical questions, but the ones that I really enjoy and I think that a lot of times, I think have a lot of relevance, especially to players once they've reached a certain level, is a lot of the conversations around the mental side of the game, or whether it's how did you approach a particular situation, or what it is when you particularly get nervous. And a lot of times I tell them is I don't necessarily have the answers. What I can share is the experiences, through my journey. For example, just the other day I was having a conversation with a player, and he was talking about how every time he fails, he gets depressed and he gets disappointed, and he's not able to sort of recover from that very, very quickly. And it sort of goes back to your own time as a young player coming through, when you're not a very confident young player, and you start equating your results and your performances with who you are as a person. And clearly, very much early on in my career, when I did well on a cricket field, I would walk down next day to breakfast with a spring in my step, and I would walk with a smile. But if I did badly, I might avoid the breakfast, because I would think that people were judging me, or I would, look at. I sort of viewed, I guess, my life based on my success and failure as a cricketer, and I can see that with a lot of the young cricketers. And you sort of try to tell them that hopefully, as you get older and you get a bit more mature, you realize that who you are as a person is very different from who you are as a cricketer, and you cannot actually. You can't just because you don't score runs doesn't make you a bad person, and just because you score a few runs or take a few wickets doesn't mean that you're a great guy. And I think just understanding that distinction is not easy for young people, and how you manage your emotional and mental energy outside of the cricket field so that you can bring that emotional and mental energy onto the cricket field, I think is as important as any amount of technical coaching that I can give them.
Kind of cricket you played, and you specialized in correct cricket, and you excelled in that. From that, the game has changed a lot, and I'm not just talking of T20. Even Test cricket changed a lot. How did you cope with it? Because your game was of a different type, and then how did you then mold your game to one-day cricket and then to T20s?
If you ask me as a young kid, what did I want to become? I would always say I wanted to become a Test cricketer. I didn't want to become a one-day cricketer. Or even though there was one-day cricket, I never thought of becoming a one-day cricketer. I remember in our coach, when I was growing up, if you hit the ball in the air in the nets, he would get very upset. So try imagining telling Rohit Sharma something like that when he scores those 15 sixes in Bangalore, whatever, 250 runs.
Right.
And so the game has changed. And we were just, talking the other day, a couple of us coaches here in Delhi, and we just, and we're from obviously, like you said, a different vintage. And we were just seeing some of the shots that are being played, and we were marveling at it and saying, it's incredible. Sometimes we think, why didn't we think of this? Why didn't I stand there in the middle of a ground and practice range hitting? When I see Carlos Braithwaite today just hit the ball and it goes miles.
You were not an ordinary slip catcher.
It does help when you're a slip catcher to have big hands.
That, by the way, is a world record that he holds, the highest number of slip catches in Test cricket. And Scott Dravid bowled Kumble is to India what Scott Mark bowled McGrath is to Australia.
I think taking catches was, for me, one of the best things of playing this game. But if you took a good catch, everyone just was there, and you got a chance to contribute to someone else's success. And I think the most disappointing times for me in a cricket field have been when I've dropped catches of someone's bowling. I think, sometimes you see the effort that a bowler puts in, and sometimes it's hot, and he's running in, Srinath's running in, and he's into his 20-second over, and he finally manages to get a nick on a slow wicket, and you put it down, and you just feel like you've let somebody down. And I think that was, and I worked on it. I think slip catching was something that I worked quite hard on.
Shashi?
2007 at the Oval, you declared it an innings, and I wrote a very intemperate piece in the Times of India that some mutual friends claimed you'd been very upset about. So I apologize, because I used this terrible phrase, Rahul Dravid, a man I used to respect. I was that upset that day. But in fact, I respect him before and since, and I continue to do so. But it was simply that we had the English with their backs against the wall, their knees on the ground. They'd just been bowled out. We had a massive lead. Our bowlers were still relatively fresh, and you didn't enforce the follow-on. And the result was they exploited the conditions, reduced us to next to nothing. We suddenly had our backs against the wall, and the match ended in a draw. And I thought, this is the Indian talent. We just don't have that killer instinct to go for victory. However, we
just won the series in, I think it was the first time we won a series there in 21 years.
Okay. So that's the question. I mean, why is it, this never used to happen when I was a kid growing up, that people with more than a 200-run lead didn't enforce the follow-on? Why has this now become a fashion more and more? What's the cricketing logic behind it?
And as I told you, every one of the 1.25 billion Indians is a cricket coach. So you answered this one now. On the declaration, your answer is that you had already won the series. You didn't want to.
Yeah, I think, Shashi raises a good point, is why do people do that a lot more often? I think it's just the nature of the amount of cricket that's also being played. And I think that teams are realizing that when you're playing a test series and a test match with just 4 bowlers, you cannot afford to burn them to the ground. Wickets maybe are getting better and better. The quality of wickets are getting, it's not that easy to knock over opposition 2 times. You have 4 bowlers in your bowling attack, and if you make them follow on and bowl again, there's every chance they might survive that match and you might win that game, but that could cost you 3 months down the line or 2 months down the line. So it's really a question of now trying to manage resources while trying to get the best result.
My question is that, I'm sure each one of the guests sitting here will agree that you are one of the rare gems of Indian cricket, not just because of the cricket you've played, but because of the way you conducted your professional career with very strong principles and discipline and integrity. That is something which is unfortunately missing in the current generation of cricketers. Now that you are mentoring Delhi Daredevils, I'm sure you must be doing a fantastic job there as far as the cricket skills are concerned. But how do you mentor them on the professional ethics, and what piece of advice do you have for the future generation of cricketers?
I think the generation has changed. There are just, obviously this generation is a much more louder generation. They're a bit more in-your-face kind of generation. But they're a lot more confident and a lot more courageous generation than we were. I mean, look at Virat Kohli, and I love using his example. I know that people focus a lot on, the fact that he's outwardly, he sort of gives you the impression that he's this brash, young, and sure, he likes a lot of the things that, young people like, which is not a wrong thing. But the thing that I like, the thing that I like about him is the incredible improvement that I see every time I see him. He just keeps improving and improving. And every time I look at Virat and I think, wow, he can't raise the bar anymore. He actually raises it. Every innings, you think, no, he can't get better than this. And suddenly you see another innings, which is, oh, wow, how is he doing that?